Let's face it, somewhere along the road you've been stuck scrolling through your emails, trying to find that support request a customer swear they've sent 2 weeks ago. You just can't find it. Your customer needs to go back and find it to forward again or completely rewrite it. This is not good for your image. Whether you're a small team or an established company, your customers will always need support. Let's see how we can handle this process using Smartsuite. Hi there, I'm Quentin Pearson and welcome to Elevate. We help small teams and companies automate manual processes with low-code tools. We help you integrate your new and existing tools to work more efficiently, save money, and save time. Visit us at elevateam.net. You can go to your dashboard and add a new solution. Let's start this one from scratch. When I start, I like to rename the solution just to get a better idea of what's going on. For now, I'll just call this one Support Demo 2, for example. We can select a color, add an icon, and then go in. You see that's renamed, and we can name the table. For now, this one will be called Support Requests. And each record should be called a request. There we go. When I start out, I'd like to remove all these default fields. And once we have an empty canvas, I'd like to start by adding the most important information. So for this case, we'll have a title, and then also an assignee. You can select a user, but for this demo, I'm just going to use a single select. So for the single select, we'll call this assignee, and we'll add some values. You can go ahead and add this field, and then continue onwards. So by default, there should be a description added. I'll just let that go in, and then add a category for the client, and this should be a single select as well, and we can add values as well. Next, we probably want a priority as well, which I'll also leave as a single select. And in this case, it would make sense to assign some coloring to make it more obvious what's going on. So low, I'd actually like to leave at blue, normal would be more of a yellow, high and orange, and urgent red. And then I'd like to add a status. So in Smartsuite, we have the status option, and this allows you to then decide which one of these options can be completed. So complete, let's remove some of these results. We'll change this. And then possibly we'd like to add the client's full name as well, just to later link it with a customer. So we want the first name and the last name, and then possibly the email of this customer as well. In my case, I'm going to hide these fields just because the information is going to be linked to the client as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a new table from scratch to be the house for all of the customers. You have the customers table, and again, I'm going to remove all these fields. So for the customers, we'd like to add a full name again, and then we'd like to add an email. Okay, so this is the most basic information. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a link to the support requests so that we can backlink into this customer and make sure that all support requests are linked to the correct customer. So I'm going to select the link record, I'm going to rename this to customer, or not customer, support request. And then we're going to allow multiple support requests to be linked to this customer. When that's done, we should be able to go to support requests, view the fields to display, and we should have this link to customers. Normally I don't like this name, and I would only name this customer. With this, the basic outline should be completed, and we can go in and start with the form that we want to embed in our website. So to do that, I go into support requests, create a new view, and select the form. Once we have that, we can name the form whatever we want. So let's call this support request. Here we go. So we can open that, give it a title and a description. There we go. So what we can do now is look at all the information we want. We probably need a full name first and then the email to be able to contact this client. We then ask them to select a category just to know what it's about, and then possibly a priority. So they can either decide this or not. But looking at this, we can also give default values to these selects. So if we go back over here, we can go to the category, for example, go to defaults, and then select a default. But that wouldn't make much sense. I believe that would be more suited to priority or status. So for the priority, we can make the default low unless the client then selects something different. And for the status, we can make it by default a new request, because each new request that's created will then by default have this value. Going back to our form, we have the category, we have the priority, and let's say the name is required, the email is required, and the category is required. Priority is not that important unless they say it is. So once we have the priority, it would be important to have a description of what's going on, and this would obviously be required as well. I think that would be everything we need. Once that's done, let's try and create an automation. This would just help us to not manually need to go over and do this, but each time a new support request is submitted, we can automatically create a new customer. So let's say create a new automation. I'd always like to rename this as soon as possible, just to not have any weird naming, but know what each automation does. So in this case, we'll call it, how we'd handle this is add a trigger. So when a record is created in the support requests, we then want to create a new record within the customers table. Over here we can then add the fields we would like to add, and that would be, in this case, in the full name we'd like to add the first name, and then we'd also like to add the last name, and then as a new field we then link the support request and also the email address. And that should be all the information. So then we can go ahead and either add some traffic data, or better yet, we can go into the trigger data that we've received and then get this information. So we want the full name, and we go into the full name and select the first name from that. Then we go into the trigger's full name field and get the last name to link as well. We'd also like to link the support request that was created to the customer. So we would then go ahead and find the title and have that sorted, and then add the email as well. So by default, when we add this, we get the option to keep it off or turn it on. For now, I'm going to turn it on. There's one more thing I'd like to do on both tables and kind of adjust this title. So by default, this is manual input and it requires to be unique. So I'd like to set this as auto-generated. For the support request, for example, I'd like to use the client's full name. create some static information over there just to separate the full name. And then I'd like to select the category as well. Then generates a title based on some information we have in the table. Same thing goes for the customers. So I'd also want this auto-generated, and then I'd want to use the full name for this and just update this field. Because we're going to have the full name in the title, I'm also going to hide this field, and that's sorted. So we can go back to support requests, go to the form, and then we should find a link at the top here. You can copy that URL and open that in a new tab. The form will load in, and we can then enter some information that a customer would add. Once they've filled in all the fields, they can go ahead and submit this form. It's done, and they have the option to submit another response, or we can then go back to our solution and view the support requests. We can then see the test person and the category linked to that. We see we have no assignee. This is a case where we can also add a default value of either a specific person or nothing. In this case, I think it makes sense to have one more choice and call this no assignee. I'll probably put that all the way to the top. Go to defaults and then add no assignee as the default. So that's what it would look like after the automation. We can go ahead and create a new view as well for whoever handles these new support requests. We call this assign members, create the view, and then have a look at it. So we can see this item has no assignees. To change this, we can then go to the fields to display. We can then add the customer if we want, and then possibly add the description as well, so we can see exactly what's going on. We can then drag this over and assign it to a member. And then possibly each of these members would want their own views. You can create this and then set this as a public or a private view, or the members can come in and create their own views. So let's say, for example, Michael wants his own view. He can select private and create the view. Within here, he has a few options. So the same as in the previous view, he can then decide what information he wants to see, possibly the client's full name and email and the description as well. Then what we'd like to do is filter this to only have Michael's assigned support requests. So we can go into assignee and say the assignee is Michael. He can do that by status. That way you can see all these new requests he's assigned, and once he's done, he can possibly resolve it just by dragging and dropping the item. Okay, so that's an overview of someone that's going to assign the members, some personal views, and then over here we can also see the test person that was created when submitting the form and using the automation we've set up. Thanks so much for watching the video. If it helped you out at all, please consider subscribing or contacting us on elevateteam.net so that we can look into your own use case and possibly create custom solutions to make your life just a little easier.